come to the verse, just want to further a little bit look into it in the context of what was the need for Sukdev Goswami, first of all, to speak about Lord Ram? This is the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, when Sukdev Goswami already knows Parishit Maharaj have heard numerous times about Lord Ramachandra. So why to even speak in brief? What was the need of it? So, as we know, 2nd canto, 10th chapter describes, there is a verse spoken by Sukdev Goswami, or you can say Sutta Goswami, which describes the rest of the 10 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. Atra sarga visargascha sthanam poshanam utaya manvantra shanu katha nirodho muktirashraya. So this 9th canto is a subject matter of Ishanu Katha. Ishanu Katha, the same 2nd canto, 10th chapter, verse number 5, actually defines the definition of Ishanu Katha also. I'll not go into the verse, but the point is mentioned, Ishanu Katha, this 9th canto primarily speaks on the subject matter of various incarnations of the Lord, their activities, as well as of various pure devotees of the Lord. And that is a summum and bonum of this 9th canto, with the main focus on 3 key components or key subjects: to invoke bhakti, jnana, vijnana, and vairagya, to inspire bhakti, vijnana, and vairagya. So 9th canto Srimad Bhagavatam begins with Parikshit Maharaj inquiring from Sukdev Goswami about the dynasty of Vaivasvata Manu. I believe all of you would remember or recall that this Vaivasvata Manu also comes in Bhagavad Gita. Where does Vaivasvata Manu comes in Bhagavad Gita? I mean, I thought kind of make it a little interactive, so thought of asking this question. And just recently, Gita Jayanti was there, so I believe all of you or some of you would have read. Anyone? Quick? All right, so that comes in the 4th chapter, verse number 1, where actually Lord Shri Krishna begins to speak about the history of Bhagavad Gita. And he said how he first instructed the sun god Vivaswan, then Vivaswan instructed his son Vaivasvata Manu, and Vaivasvata Manu, Mahabharata actually has a reference where Vivaswan instructed Vaivasvata Manu at the beginning of the Treta Yuga actually. And then Vaivasvata Manu instructed Ikshvaku, and like that, the parampara of the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita have continued. So this 9th canto largely speaks about 2 dynasties, one starting from sun god Vivaswan, who had a son by the name of Vaivasvata Manu, and then Ikshvaku, who is one of the ancestors of Lord Ram, like that. And then after that, after I believe the 14th chapter and forth, after that there is a description of the dynasty starting from moon god. I will not go into the details of the dynasty. All of you would have already read about the dynasty of sun god. So point is, like, through these dynasties, wherein different personality of Godheads and the pure devotees have appeared, these stories are being discussed in the 9th canto. We have already discussed or heard the story, not discussed, heard the story of Ambrish Maharaj, then probably studied about the descent of Mother Ganges, and now we are discussing what? Lord Ramachandra. So this is a little brief or recap of why we are studying about Lord Ram, because the dynasty of Vaivasvata Manu is being described. And while describing the dynasty of Vaivasvata Manu, the discussion of Dashrath and then his son Lord Ram comes. Therefore, Sukdev Goswami is briefly touching on the subject matter of Lord Ramchandra. And 9th canto ends with introducing Lord Shri Krishna, because then after a few chapters, Sukdev Goswami begins to speak about the moon dynasty, under which you have Yadu Vamsha, Kuru Vamsha, like that all dynasty comes over here. So coming back to this chapter, the 10th chapter, where the discussion about Lord Ram, or you can call it as, Ramayana. So the word Ramayana means, Ayana means journey of Lord Ram. So we generally take it as it's about Lord Ram. But many Sri Vaishnava scholars, they actually also call it as Sita Charitam. Sita Charitam, why? today, which means it's a journey of Mother Sita, where Mother Sita is compared with a living entity. Just like if you look at the purport, in the last 2-3 lines, Prabhupada in the verse mentions very interesting thing. Prabhupada said, religion consists of the orders of the Supreme Lord, that is Dharmam to Sakshat Bhagavad Pranitam. And one who carries out these orders is religious. One who fails to carry out the Lord's orders is irreligious and he is to be punished. So Sita Charitam, why? Because as I said, Sita represents Mother Sita represents a living entity. Just like Mother Sita disobeyed Lord Ram's instruction and she crossed the line, she got kidnapped by Ravana. And then the struggle of Mother Sita, in other words, the struggle of living entity in the material world. And then how, when a living entity surrenders unto the Lord, gets rescued by the Lord, like that, another perspective is offered in Ramayana. So prior to this verses, we saw how Lord Ram was sentenced for 14 years of exile. It's interesting, isn't it? Lord Ram is exiled, and then in Dwapar Yuga, Pandavas are exiled. But interestingly, both of them are exiled for the same purpose. Keke never wanted to see Lord Ram back. She wanted her son to be the king forever. Similarly, Dhritarashtra, of course, maybe Dhritarashtra was not the one who decided that, but let's say Duryodhana, Shukuni, who decided, they didn't want Yudhishthira Maharaj to be back in the kingdom, isn't it? Because they wanted, or Duryodhana wanted to be the king. So, but an obvious question arises, why Lord Ram was sent to exile for 14 years, whereas Pandavas were sent to exile for 12 years. Of course, 12 plus 1. One is the Agyatavas. That was a trap, so that they would be again sent out for 12 years. So why there's a difference of 2 years? It is explained. If, of course, the age is not mentioned here. Lord Ram, when he was 12-year-old, he got married to Mother Sita. Mother Sita was just 6-year-old. And then when they came back to Ayodhya, they lived happily almost for 12 to 13 years. So Lord Ram was almost close to 25 years of his age when he was sent to, or when he was exiled. So according to Vedic understanding, this punishment of sending out a person to an exile, either for 14 years or 12 years, is like giving a death sentence, which is equivalent to death sentence, because the forest in those days were filled with all kind of demoniac living entities, man-eater demons, as well as ferocious animals. And somebody who goes and lives for so long, very rare would come back. But again, why is there a difference of 2 years? Lord Ram, when he was exiled, he was 25 years. He was sent out for 14 years. Whereas when Pandavas were exiled, Yudhishthira Maharaj was more than 50 years. So according to Vedic principle, if a person is above 50 years, his punishment was 12 years of exile. And if he's less than 50 years, his punishment was for 14 years, like that. In other words, either give 12 or 14 years. When the punishment comes like that, you understand the logic behind it, that this person does not want to see you back. That was the whole thing. So like this, Lord Ram has been exiled. Story moves on. Mother Sita gets kidnapped. And now Lord Ram is there, looks like apparently face to face with Ravana. And Lord Ram is chastising Ravana. When I read it, I was like, wow, Lord seems to be really angry. I mean, the kind of words Lord is using here. In the first canto, there is a reference comes when Lord Shri Krishna is on the war in the battlefield. And Lord Shri Krishna is angry. Arjuna is angry. I don't know if that was at the battlefield or maybe in the case of, the Draupadi's sons getting killed, either of it. The point is mentioned is Arjuna is angry, Lord is angry. Arjuna's eyes are red hot, while Lord Shri Krishna's eyes are of the same, cool, composed, calm eyes. And the reason mentioned is because Lord is transcendental. He just, there's his anger and his love is non-different. In other words, it's all absolute. But however, here, Lord Ram really looks angry, but this anger of the Lord is not out of envy. In fact, it's out of compassion. Just like when a child becomes naughty, sometimes the mother or the father punishes a child. It's for the benefit of the child. So Lord Ram, as you know of, many times, he wanted to give a chance. He wanted to forgive Ravana, but Ravana would not hear. Prabhupada in the second line writes in the purport, the Ravana was so sinful and shameless that he did not know what the result would be of kidnapping Mother Sita. Now, when Prabhupada is writing that he did not knew the result of kidnapping Mother Sita, it's not that he was not told that who he's messing around with, but he just didn't want to accept the reality. Marich told him, he told him his own story, what happened to him, yet Ravana was not willing to listen. So, interesting story comes about when Lord Ram had sent Angad. They have crossed ocean, they're there at Lanka, and Lord Ram had sent Angad. Actually, he had sent Sugriv first with a message. And Sugriv was so angry and so upset when he went to meet Ravana. Ravana even didn't know, or Sugriv, went in such a way that Ravana didn't realize. And Sugriv went and he spitted at Ravana. And Ravana was wondering why there is no clouds, from where this little bit of rain is coming. And after a while, he realized there was a monkey who was spitting at him. And he spitted at Ravana, he ran away from there. And Lord Ram became upset. He said, oh, you don't do like this. I sent you with a message. Then he asked Angad. So Angad went. And Angad went with the message. Angad went and met Ravana. And Angad told Ravana that I'm a messenger of Lord Ram. I'm the most insignificant monkey. And Lord Ram had sent me with a message. Message of truce. He wants to give you one more chance. Lord Ram has said, if you give back Mother Sita, Lord Ram will forgive you for all the offenses that you have done. And then Ravana asked, who are you? Introduce yourself. So Angad said, I am a son of Vali. Now, Vali and Ravana had a history, very interesting history, where Ravana once tried messing around with Vali. He heard Vali is a very, very powerful man. And if anyone comes in front of Vali, Vali acquires 50% strength of that person. So Ravana thought, I will not go in front of the Vali. I'll go from behind, catch hold of Vali's tail, roll him and smash him on the ground and kill him. So Ravana went from behind of Vali and he tried attacking him. In the meantime, Vali, by his tail, captured Ravana. And he captured and tightened him so badly that Ravana became helpless. And it is explained about Vali that Vali would every day visit 4 tirthas: Dwarka, Jagannath Puri, Badrinath, as well as Rameshwaram. That's where he would do his, Sandhya Vandan. Every day he would travel like this. So here now Ravana tied in the tail of Vali. Now Vali is jumping from one mountain to another and Ravana is helplessly being dragged all over the place. And Ravana is saying, oh, come on, for God's sake, at least give me some respect. At least beat me by your hands. You're holding me my tail. Like this, he began to pray to Vali. Finally, there was a truce between Vali and Ravana like that. And Ravana glorified Vali and so forth. So Angad said, now you remember that Vali? I am the son of that Vali. So Ravana asked, where is that Vali? And Angad said that Vali has been killed. And Ravana literally fainted. He said, how can that be killed? And he asked who killed him and how did he got killed? And Angad said he got killed by one single arrow. Ravana said impossible because the chest of Vali was so powerful. In fact, his chest was the most strongest in this whole creation. Nobody could even put a scratch on the chest. So finally Angad said, well, yes. And that Vali was killed by none other than Ram, Lord Ram. When Sri Vaishnava Acharya was explaining, Ravana was one of the original Mayavadis because he did not accept, or he thought, or he considered Lord Ram to be a mere human being. He didn't understood the divinity in the human form. In other words, the Lord Ram is a supreme personality of Godhead. So long story short, finally Angad challenged Ravana, and the story goes on where Ravana failed miserably. He could not even defeat Angad. In short, I'll just summarize this, where Angad put his feet forward and he said, I am the most insignificant monkey in the army of Lord Ram, and you're not yet willing to accept the proposal. If you think you're so strong, accept my challenge. Ravana said, what's your challenge? He said, I put my feet ahead here on the ground. If you think you're more powerful, if you think you're very powerful, move my feet. Now Ravana said, come on, this is an insult. I'm Ravana. You're asking me to move your feet. So he called for Indrajit. Indrajit tried, he failed. Finally, Ravana has to bow down and hold on to the feet of Angad and is trying to move the feet of Angad, which he failed. And Angad is laughing. Look at it, look at it. This 10-headed demon is holding on to my feet. If this Ravana of yours is holding the feet of one insignificant monkey, what will you do with the rest of the army? Like that, Angad came back. So point is, Lord, time and again, he gave an opportunity. So this anger of Lord is not based on envy. He wanted to give a chance, but Ravana was just not willing to hear to it. Just like message of Bhagavad Gita was heard by two people. One was Arjuna, who heard directly from Krishna, and second person who heard was Dhritarashtra through the medium of Sanjaya. Isn't that interesting? Now, Virat Roop, 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Shri Krishna and his Virat Roop have actually shown the result of the war, which has been told to Dhritarashtra by Sanjaya. Everything is known what's going to happen to Dhritarashtra even before the war began. Yet at the end of Bhagavad Gita, when Sanjaya asked Dhritarashtra, what's your decision? He said, destiny is all powerful. Maybe today, the time is favoring Pandavas. Who knows tomorrow, time may favor my sons. He yet did not change. And so does, nothing could change Ravana, nothing could budge Ravana. If you briefly look into the life of Ravana, Ravana has a high birth. He was a great scholar. He was actually a great grandson of Brahma. Brahma had a son by the name of Pulastya Muni. Pulastya Muni had a son by the name of Vishrava. And Vishrava got married to a daughter of a demon, Sumali. His daughter name was Kaikashi. So there was a whole plot. At that point of time, the demons had become very weak. And this Sumali wanted to have a powerful son. So he had a very beautiful daughter by the name of Kakasi or Kakasi, whatever way you want to pronounce it. And he asked her to go and entice Vishrava, who was a very, very great sage. So Kakashi went and approached Vishrava. And it was an inauspicious time when she had approached. Because of that, she gave birth to this 10-headed demon, Ravana, then Kumkara, then Suparka, and there were some more siblings. And finally, in the end, there was Vibhishan. The point I'm trying to make is, well, briefly speaking about Ravana's life, Ravana was not any ordinary, person, uneducated person. He was highly learned in scriptures, being the son of such a great sage, a great Brahmana. He's coming in the lineage of Brahma himself like that. Yet, just like Srila Prabhupada gave a hint in this particular purport, while talking about the difference between divine and demoniac. If you take a look at the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Lord introduces there are two kinds of living entities. One is divine and second is demoniac. And in that, Lord Shri Krishna himself says, both divine and demoniac had the same ancestors, which means have the same father. Both divine and demoniac origination, or both of them originated from our Kashyapa Muni. Kashyapa had married 13 daughters of Daksha. Of that, there was one Diti and Aditi. From Diti through Diti came Daityas. From Aditi came Adityas. So Lord Krishna says, both of them have same ancestors, have same lineage. One became divine, other became demoniac. And there is a very fine thread. Now, both are the sons of the great Brahmana, which means highly learned in scriptures. But there is a fine thread between the two. And the fine thread is, Ye Shastra Vistam Usrajya. Lord Shri Krishna says in 16th chapter, verse number 23, where he explains this subject matter, Vartate kama karata nasa siddhim avapnoti nasukam na param gatihi. That those who disobey, who do not follow the injunctions of scriptures, Vartate kama karata, those who follow their mind, those who want to do whatever they want to do, or they want to act independently, Nasa siddhim avapnoti nasukam na param gatim. They do not get anything, they do not get happiness in their life, nor perfection, nor the supreme destination. And that's the whole story about Ravana. Srila Prabhupada, in the next purport, if you'll read, there Prabhupada writes, Ravana had actually got a very majestic position in this world. He was sitting on the throne of Kuvera, actually, that capital, Sri Lanka, or what we call Lanka, not Sri Lanka, the Lanka was actually the capital or the city of Kuvera. And he got that he got that opportunity, of course, by force. He threw his brother away from that place. But having that position, the majestic position of the king, such a powerful position, who had the most beautiful wife in this whole world as Mandodari, yet such a personality, such a powerful person, such a learned man. When we talk about demoniac, it doesn't mean that he was ugly looking. Of course, Kumbhakarna was little, and Stuparkana definitely was a deformed, child born. Ravana, just only thing he had 10 heads like that, not that he was ugly looking. So, yet from that majestic position, he fell down. Similarly with Dhritarashtra, everything he had, because of his stubbornness, obstinacy to hold on to the seat, the throne of Hastinapur, which anyways Yudhishthira Maharaj would have never ever asked for. But his insecurity, his fear that if Yudhishthira Maharaj existed, there would always be a fear to my position of being a king, led or made him to make one wrong decision after another wrong decision. Although Lord Shri Krishna told him the future of the war, yet Dhritarashtra did not hear, did not budge, or did not change. So similarly, Srila Prabhupada mentions the last line, one who fails to carry out the Lord's orders is irreligious and he is to be punished. And same thing happened with Ravana. Lord Ram had sent his messengers, had warned him, had suggested him, even to an extent where Lord Ram said that he will protect Ravana. He was willing to change, he was willing to follow the Lord's advice, but he just did not do so. Just like recently, there was a plane crash. I believe all of you were aware of it in India, where CDS, I believe we call it, the Chief of Defense Services, very brave, a soldier and a serviceman, along with many other dedicated persons, the army men, they died in a plane crash. So whenever there is a plane crash, they always look for a black box to get a clue what happened, what led to the destruction of the crash of the flight. Now, for an ignorant person, he may have to, he may come up with different theories of what led to the destruction of Ravana. But if you look through the pages of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Shri Krishna makes it very clear. Whoever takes the path that Ravana took, or Dhritarashtra took for that reason, their destination would be like this. They'll not only destroy themselves, but they'll destroy everyone around them. And this subject matter is briefly discussed in the 3rd chapter, where Lord Shri Krishna says, where he describes the greatest enemy of the living entity. And what is the greatest enemy of the living entity? Kama Isha, Krodha Isha, Rajoguna Samudva Mahashano Mahapapma Vidhi Enam Hi Varinam. Well, Lord Shri Krishna said, 3rd chapter, 37 verse, my dear Arjuna, Kama, lust. Kama is loosely defined or is kind of translated as lust, but Srila Prabhupada describes lust, not only the gross sense of lust for opposite gender. Lust means material desires. Desires to do something different or independent than the will of the Lord. So this Kama, this lust, who has a younger brother by the name of Krodha. Kama Yesha Krodesha Rajaguna Samudbhava, which is born of the contact of mode of passion. Mahashano Mahapapma. Mahashano Mahapapma, not Papma. Mahapapma, the most sinful. Mahashano, not destructive, the most destructive. Mahashano Mahapapma. Vidhi, Vidhi means to know. Vidhi enam hi varinam. Very, it's a Hindi word. किसी के संग बैर कर लेना, तो Varina means he is our greatest enemy. The enemy does not lie out of us. The enemy lies within us. The fault is not in anyone else. The fault is within us. That's what Lord Shri Krishna introduces here. And because of this unsatisfied, unfulfilled, unsatiated desires of Ravana, and for that reason, for the Dhritarashtra, of anyone who takes that path of not following scriptural injunctions or not following the orders of the Lord, that's what they lead to, or that's what happens to them. So I will not go into the details of it. I'm pretty sure you all have read this particular chapter, the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. But when Lord Shri Krishna introduces the subject matter of lust, he does not just identifies the problem with us, he also gives the solution. But before giving the solution, Lord Shri Krishna once, twice or thrice how great this enemy is. Krishna says this enemy of lust is never fulfilled, is never satisfied. How much you try to fulfill it, it would never be. In fact, it burns more, just like adding a petrol, adding a fuel onto the burning pyre or the fire. It just, the flames increases. Similarly, the more a person tries to fulfill a lust, the more a person becomes miserable. Just a very small analysis of it. When a person's desire gets fulfilled, material desires, quote unquote, when one's material desire gets fulfilled, then what happens next? What after lust comes when the desire gets fulfilled? Then comes greed. Ye dil mange more. All of you would have heard of it, isn't it? So ye dil mange more is the next thing that comes. And when the desire is not fulfilled, then comes anger. In either case, the person remains dissatisfied. And therefore, in 5th chapter, later on, Lord Shri Krishna says, Ye hi samsparsh jab hoga dukha yoni evate adyantavantakanteya nateshu ramate buddha. So Lord Shri Krishna describes lust like this, and then he gives a 3-point solution of defeating lust. So the subject matter of Ravana, when we discuss about the subject matter of Ravana, generally we use this example for self-introspection and also try to understand the warning which has been given through the case study of Ravana. Ravana represents the exploitative nature, where rather than service attitude, we want to exploit. And here, Ravana wanted to exploit Lord's energy, the internal potency, and therefore his destruction was inevitable. And that is all because of lust. So how do we defeat lust? Lord Shri Krishna mentions a 3-point formula in lust, a 3-point formula for defeating lust. The very first thing in the 40th verse, Lord Shri Krishna says, actually helps Arjuna identify the sitting places. Imagine you're fighting a war with an enemy, but you cannot see an enemy. How would you defeat an enemy? If you don't know where enemy lies, how do we defeat? So therefore, Lord Shri Krishna, first of all, identifies the sitting places of lust. That's in 3rd chapter, verse number 40. And he says the sitting places of lust are senses, the mind, and intelligence. Indriyani mano buddhir asya drishthanam uchyate eter vimoiti yesha jnanam avratya dehinam. So after identifying the 3 sitting places, then second point that Lord Shri Krishna gives for defeating lust is among these 3, it is easiest to defeat lust when it is at the sense level. When it comes from the mind level, dhyayato vishyantumsa sangaste sopajayate, 2nd chapter, 62 and 63rd verse, it becomes very difficult. And at intelligence level, that is already lost. There's no, what is that? No returning back, no coming back from that. It's already gone. So Krishna says in 41st verse, at the level of senses, for example, somebody has, a little bit weakness of eyes. If he sees something tempting, he gets attractive. So just take care of it, what you look or not look at it. Similarly with the taste buds, similarly be careful of what you eat and all that. Similarly with the ears. If we are conscious of it, we can put filters around it and protect ourselves. But once the thing goes inside, then it's very, very difficult. Unless a person has cultivated enough spiritual strength, coming out of it is very difficult. And third step, Lord Shri Krishna says in text number 43, where Krishna says, Arjuna, if you want to defeat lust, you have to cultivate transcendental knowledge. Only by cultivating transcendental knowledge, you'll be able to defeat lust. What is transcendental knowledge? Which is the subject matter of the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. But 3 things, 3 points, you can call it as the essence of transcendental knowledge. The very first, who am I? I'm not the body, but spirit, soul. Who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna? And third, what is my relationship with the Lord? And of course, with the energies of the Lord, which is the subject matter of the rest of the Bhagavad Gita. To conclude with, in this particular verse, where we see Lord Ram is very angry at Ravana. Why Lord Ram is very angry? As Srila Prabhupada concludes with the last 2-3 lines of the purport, where he says, one who fails to carry out the Lord's orders is irreligious and he has to be punished. So Ravana, despite Lord Ram's warning, or in fact, you can say the request or the message sent to him, he did not budge from his, point of view, from what he wanted to do, and therefore he had to suffer. As I said during the class, there were two people who heard the message of Bhagavad Gita. One was Arjuna, and second, Dhritarashtra. Arjuna got reformed, he got cleared of his confusion, but Dhritarashtra did not got cleared of his confusion. Very interesting. When at the final day, it's in the 18th evening actually, Duryodhana is almost on the brink of giving up his body. At that point of time, as you know, the story when Bhima had broken down the thighs of Duryodhana, when Duryodhana is about to give his life, then Duryodhana looks at Krishna and he calls him. He says, he pins the whole blame of the war at Krishna. He says, you, Krishna, you are responsible. You coward boy, you cheated all of us. Because of you, this war has happened. Because of you, so many people have died. Because of you, I am lying in this situation. Of course, Krishna was kind of an instrument for what happened to Duryodhana at that point of time, because he indicated that should happen. So that's, Duryodhana continued to blame Lord Shri Krishna. And then Lord Shri Krishna, after hearing all this thing, looked at Hare Krishna. Is the Zoom meeting on? I don't see anything here.
Oh,
okay, sorry. Something happened to my screen. I couldn't see anything. There was some other slide deck. What was I saying? So Krishna said, Lord Shri Krishna looked at Duryodhana and he said, Duryodhana, although you're pinning blame to me, but please understand, I am not responsible for what happened. You are solely responsible for it. And he said something very profound. I really like this particular point. Lord Shri Krishna said, Duryodhana, you know what was your biggest mistake? You never ever heard to the good advice of your seniors. Again, the point of obedience and disobedience. As Prabhupada mentions, what is the difference between divine and demoniac? They're disobedient towards the Vedic injunctions to Guru and Gauranga. And who is the divine? Who is obedient? Lord Shri Krishna said, Duryodhana, you were never obedient. Duryodhana's mother, Gandhari, advised him, chastised him. Vidura did, Bhishma Pitama did. Lord Shri Krishna personally went, yet Duryodhana never ever changed. Similarly, we see what happened in the case of Ravana also. Lord Ram personally sent his messenger, yet Ravana was not willing to change. To conclude with, how do we understand? Because the purport is kind of speaking about the divine and demoniac. Ravana failed because he was disobedient, he was independent, he wanted to do what he wanted to do. So how do we become obedient, or how do we know what Lord wants? And I'll just read that out. It's a very important point. That comes in, I have the book, 11th chapter, verse number 33 of Virat Roop chapter, where there's very beautiful purport, where Prabhupada mentions, how do we, as a common man, understand what is the will of the Lord? Okay, there are scriptures, but it's not that easy to understand what scriptures actually, how do we apply it? So Prabhupada mentions, I don't know, Ramchandra, if it is possible for anyone to show up, otherwise I'll just read out, okay? This is 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, verse number 33, reading from the 4th line of the purport. The whole world is moving according to the plan of the Supreme Personality Godhead. Foolish persons who do not have sufficient knowledge think that nature is moving without a plan, and all manifestations are but accidental formations. There are many so-called scientists who suggest perhaps it was like this or maybe like that, but there is no question of perhaps and maybe. There is a scientific plan being carried out in this material world. What is this plan? This cosmic manifestation is a chance for the conditioned souls to go back to God and back to home. As long as they have had the domineering mentality, which makes them try to lord it over material nature, they are conditioned. But anyone who can understand, this is the point to be highlighted, who can understand the plan of the Supreme Lord and cultivate Krishna consciousness is most intelligent. The creation and destruction of the cosmic manifestation under the superior guidance of the Lord. Thus, the battle of Kurukshetra was fought according to the plan of God. And next, 34th purport. How do we understand the plan of the God? Prabhupada writes in the 34th verse purport. Every plan is made by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he's so kind and merciful to his devotees that he wants to give the credit to his devotees who carry out his plan according to his desire. Prabhupada writes, life should therefore move in such a way that everyone acts in Krishna consciousness and understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the medium of his spiritual master. The plans of the spiritual Supreme Personality Godhead are understood, to be underlined, by his mercy, kripa, tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam, dadami buddhi yogantam yenamapi. That's the point here. Second, and the plans of the devotees are as good as Lord's plans. One should follow such plans and be victorious in the struggle for existence. To conclude with, or to summarize our today's discussion, we read from the 9th canto, 10th chapter, verse number 22, where Lord Ram is chastising Ravana. And we saw, we discussed first about, does Lord really get angry, or was it out of envy? No. We clarified that Lord Ram actually gave several chances to Ravana, but he was not willing to change. And then we discussed about who's divine, who's demoniac. There is a fine line. One who follows the injunctions of scriptures, one who is obedient, is called as divine, and one does not, calls as demoniac. And both of them had the same ancestors. Ravana had a great birth, high birth, was a son of a very great sage, Vishrava, was very, academically very sound, but he was disobedient. So along with that, we also discussed about why Ravana failed in his life, despite having great accomplishments, because he was victim of the lust. How to defeat lust was a part of the subject matter of our discussion today. And finally, how do we ensure that we align with the plan of the Lord? Just like I gave a concluding example of Duryodhan. Duryodhan also had everything with him, but he also failed. Why? Because he was always disobedient, as Lord said, that Duryodhan, you were always disobedient to the good advices of your seniors. So how do we become obedient, and to whom we become obedient? So that we follow the plan of the Lord. Lord Shri Krishna says in the Prabhupada in the 34th verse purport, we should try to follow the plan of the Lord, which we can understand by his mercy, or should follow the plan of his dear devotee. Both are same. If we do so, we can make our life successful, remain progressive, become progressive, and become an instrument of mercy, compassion in the hands of Guru and Gauranga. That's it for today. Thank you so much for your kind attention. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Sorry, bear with me. I just realized I went 5 minutes overboard. Excuse me for that.
We would like to express our deep gratitude to you by 3 times loudly chanting Hari Bol. So, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much for this opportunity. I also got a break from my marathon, which is going on. So it was good time some time ago when I read 9th cantos. I was happy I got an opportunity to read and also read about Lord Ram for a while. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
All right, Ramchandra, I'll leave that.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, one Malikanapto, you'd like to speak something, Prabhuji?